As promised, Matthew Fairburn from The Athletic is with us, and I'm not sure if you're hearing me, Matt, but...
Yeah, we are.
Okay. Well, it was what kind of weekend from a Sabre standpoint for you?
It was a season saving?
I'm not hearing Matthew. I'm not.
No,
sure.
I got him. I think
Okay.
okay. Yeah, let me move the microphone a little bit forward, but I think you'll be good right there.
I think it was a bit of
it sound good now.
a season-saving type of weekend.
Yeah.
You know, you're on the brink, you're desperate, and they acted like it in
Yeah.
that third period against Detroit. They get that comeback, you know, with Dalhins back in the mix, and then they come back on Monday. You know, you're not going to win a lot of games when you fall down 4-1 like they did on Saturday against Detroit, but you're going to win a lot of games if you play like you did against Edmonton. You know, if that Sabres team shows up 80% of the time the rest of the way, they're in pretty good shape.
Even with nowhere close to their expected lineup?
Exactly. I mean, at this point, the way the young guys are playing, the injuries, I think, are becoming less of an excuse in the room, right? Because you're getting really good performances from Noah Ostlund, from Isak Rosen. Tyson Kozak is, you know, one of Lindy Ruff's most trusted defensive forwards right now. So, and Josh Dunn too, I think, has been a really good fit on the fourth line. So, all of a sudden, these pieces are filling in to the point where, not that they're going to box a Josh Norris out of the lineup, but they are, I think, lessening that excuse of injuries for this team.
Now, one of the big changes that we saw in the Colorado game is having Tage Thompson play back in the middle of the ice as a center. He was on the wing in Utah with McLeod in the middle. Then they swapped Thompson and McLeod. They actually made the change with Josh Doan playing on that line in the third period in Detroit and last night. And Tage had some pretty, I want to say, significant quotes after that game, Colorado, saying, I feel more like myself in the middle. I feel like I'm moving my feet better and all of that. And he responded in Detroit, and I thought he was really good last night. Do you think that this is unless Josh Norris was coming back, but, this is still going to be a little bit of time where we can put the debate, winger, center for Tage Thompson. He's in the middle of the ice, and his significance there has been a positive for the Sabres?
I think so. I mean, if Tage Thompson's more comfortable there and he looks more comfortable, he's getting more shot attempts, he's creating a lot more chances. He needed to be jump-started a little bit, and I feel like this is doing it. It really helps them balance out the lineup a little bit. Like you saw last night, you can move a few of those centers down the lineup and maybe spread out your scoring a little bit. It'll be interesting. I asked Lindy Ruff about it yesterday, if there was anything different about Tage at center this time compared to the last time he was playing there. And the way he explained the decision is more so the guys who are out are the guys that make him good on the wing, right? The lefties, Benson, Kulik, and even Norris, I think, to an extent, are the guys that created a lot for Thompson on the wing. But now the optimal thing is to have him in the middle. It'll be fascinating to see what they do once everybody gets healthy. Is that still the best place to put him?
Yeah.
If it gets him play him like that, I think it is.
Okay, so on that note, head coach Lindy Ruff on WGR earlier, as far as, Tage, where he, but more like what it's going to look like when Josh Norris comes back.
Yeah, you know what? I don't even think we have to make a decision. I think short term here, just leave him in the middle. If he's going as well as he's gone here the last 2 or 3 games, I think we've changed a little bit of structure, which has helped him. But out of necessity, putting him back in the middle, he has done a good job for us. Skating-wise, skating well. I think when you go back and look at, how successful he was on the right side, playing with, 2 lefties with, a left-handed centerman there for a long period with Kulik and then a left-handed winger with Benson. The puck a lot of times will work his way to the right side. I have no problem if he continues down this path, just leaving him there. When Norris comes back, he could assume the number 2 spot, and we'll make that. That's a great problem to have. I hope he continues playing the way he does, and we just leave him in the middle.
It's funny how you get to these points, because over the course of the summer, there was never a point where we said Tage was going to be the number 1 center and Norris number 2. Like, it just never looked like that based on how last year ended, and Yuri was there, and you were hoping that Norris was going to be fully healthy.
Yeah, I give Lindy Ruff some credit for being flexible. You know, it would be easy. He's been pretty adamant about Tage Thompson being on the wing, and it worked better last season when he was on the wing. But things change. You know, like he mentioned, you make a few system tweaks and you adjust to what you have. And right now they don't have Benson. They don't have Kulik, those guys that Tage had that chemistry with. He's had some chemistry with Tuck in the past, so you try to work off of that on the top line. And look, if it gets him going in this way, skating-wise, I think that was the big thing before that, then, you know, I think it can work. And all of a sudden, you know, a week ago we were talking about the center spine of this team. You know, you had Greenway up top at one point playing center, and now you could have Thompson and Norris 1-2. That's a much better looking lineup.
You work with words, you know, obviously you write articles. You know, there's things that bug us. We don't, but there's things that bug us.
We just blabber.
You know, and like Lindy says, that's a great problem to have. I'm like, there's no such thing as having a great problem. It's the situation you have, and you try to manipulate it, whatnot. So I think it's funny. It's like, well, you know, Dalhins coming back. Like, he hasn't played. He missed 3 games. He hadn't played in a while, but he comes back, and you play him, you know, 24, 25 minutes a game. It's like, oh, that's a great problem to have. You got fresh legs, but maybe he's not in timing. What has Dalhins' impact been to you watching it, just with Samuelsson and the rest of the defense corps?
I feel like the first thing is emotional. You know, like Rasmus Dahlin comes back, and you can feel a different sense of belief in the group. When he's on the ice, it's pretty clear. Chris Knobloch mentioned yesterday before the game that one of the most dangerous things about the Sabres that you have to look out for is the way their defensemen get involved and push the play. And I think that really opened up a lot of things in the defensive zone, and that's Dahlin, but that's also Biron, Power, Samuelsson even has really taken a step there. So I think to your point earlier, that the puck possession and the way that he can really, you know, manipulate the game. I think he's got 4 points in these 2 games since he's been back. You know, a couple of, you know, C&I shots from the point that got deflected in. He is their best player, but he's also emotionally such a driver for them. And you saw that, I think, with him returning on Saturday and just the way they feel as a group, you know, whether it's playing for him with what he's going through or just the fact that they have a little bit more belief because they're best players on the ice.
Okay, so they are still missing Benson, Norris, Danforth, Zucker, Kulik. We know Yuri's longer term.
Kesselring, too.
Talking specifically about forwards, but yes, all due respect to Michael Kesselring. Regardless of what happens from the organization when these players are healthy, what would you do with the forward group based on what we've seen from those who have been contributing of late, i.e. Dunn, Roseanne, Ostlund?
Yeah, those are guys that I would have a hard time sending down. You know, especially Ostlund and Roseanne. I mean, Dunn just feels like a regular at this point, you know, with the role that he has. He's so consistent with it. Same goes for Kozak, who I believe is kind of locked in at this point. And so then you have some decisions to make if you want to find a way to keep Ostlund and Roseanne up. Then, you know, you're going to have to make room for a lot of players. You have the 3 goalie problem, right? So
that's a roster spot. That's
a roster spot. To your point about good problems to have, not necessarily a good problem to have. I mean, if they're all
this guy,
if they're all, you know, that's not one that goalies really like. Yeah, that is just a problem.
Not a good problem.
If they were all playing well, then I guess it could fall into that category. But still, a roster problem. I think Mason Geertsen is the other domino that they probably need to decide on. He hasn't played for 7 or 8 games, I think, and when he is out there, he's been in a more limited role as far as minutes go, and that limits how much you play guys like Beck Mallenstein, right? So you want that fourth line to be able to do what it did for you last night. So they have a little bit of runway. You know, Zucker maybe by the weekend. Lindy Ruff said Norris is a little bit farther out, and Kulik farther than that. Benson, we're not really sure.
Right.
He's still in that walking boot. So they do have a little bit of runway. You can see how Ostlund and Roseanne do, but the way they're playing right now, I'd have a hard time taking them out, especially what they're giving you on the power play.
Well, we've been talking about the 20 years, you know, reunion of the 05-06 season, but I do recall, like, when Dumont went down with an injury and Briere had an injury, and obviously, you know, there was some guys that missed. it opened the door for Pominville and Roy and Gostad to play bigger minutes. And by halfway in the season, we're like, well, these guys aren't going anywhere. Like, we're better with them. And unfortunately, other guys will, either get traded, put on waivers, send down. So I personally would not be moving Dunn, Kozak, Ostlund, and Roseanne. I think that those four make the team better. So if Norris comes back, Kulich comes back, Benson comes back, Danforth down the road, whatever. Like, that's 4 new guys coming in, and these 4 guys are not coming out. I think there's some decisions that will have to be made with guys that have had maybe a roster spot in the past, but
so at minimum, are both of you moving off of the 3 goalie situation
that has to be
accommodate
number 1.
for current? Yeah,
that has to be the first domino to fall, I think, and then Geertsen comes in after that.
That's
for me.
2 spots,
and then to your point, you might have to think about a trade, or you might have to think about. Look, it's not necessarily the ideal problem because you're betting on young guys to continue this. And we've seen it for a few weeks, but these are still developing players. So can they keep it up? Particularly in Ostlund and Roseanne's case, I think it's more of a question because of their size, whether they can hold up to the physical demands.
And
but
maybe the bigger thing with Ostlund and Roseanne is that, like, Ostlund was a 4th-line guy yesterday, but he's on the top power play. So if you say we got to keep him in his 4th line, with Norris and Kulich and Zucker and Benson back, like, does he have power play minutes? Like, that's
No.
probably not.
Presumably no.
So,
Yeah.
okay, so I would think that maybe for an Ostlund, if you play 4th line minutes and no power play, it's probably not the best situation for him.
It's better off to be on the top line in Rochester playing on the power play, but you get to that point and you think that is the easy thing to do, right? Like, these guys don't have to pass through waivers, so you could put them down and kind of let them cook that way. It's good depth to have. I think to your point, about that team you played on, like, guys in the room know who should be playing, and they know who's helping them win. And I think these guys are giving them more than really anybody could have expected at this point.
So how do you alleviate the goalie situation? Who are you moving? What are you doing?
I think my first instinct would be to see if there's a trade partner for Luukkonen. And I go to that because you have not just a logjam right now, but you have a logjam in the future with Devin Levi. And so eventually you were going to have to make that decision no matter what. And I recognize that he's the one with the contract right now. But that might make it a little trickier to move him, too, unless you retain some money on that. But the 2 guys that are going right now are Lyon and Ellis, I think, the most. The two guys that Lindy Ruff seems to trust the most. And so that would be my instinct. The question is, can you find a trade partner? And that feels like a problem that has snuck up on them quicker than anticipated when they signed that contract, for sure. Because I think they always knew, the Devin Levi, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, decision might be coming at some point, but you didn't think it would be coming this soon.
Do you? Like, for me, I read into so many stupid things, and I'm like, what about, like, the fact that Lyon hasn't dressed in the last few games? It's like, well, what does that mean? Like, you're dressing Luukkonen as your backup, and that's after Lyon was pulled in Colorado after 2 goals in 6 minutes, and Lindy Ruff said, no, that wasn't on him at all, but he hasn't dressed since. I'm like, is there maybe more of a market for an Alex Lyon out there, a team that's in, I'll take the veteran, the guy that is established, lesser of a contract, as opposed to the Luukkonen with the still question mark and the bigger ticket?
I mean, I think you could find a quicker trade for sure. I mean, at 1.5 and the track record that Lyon has, I don't think you can afford to move off of him the way he played earlier in the year. And this feels to me like he's getting a legitimate rest for the first time all year after he was probably overworked. But it's good, a good thought on your point, because I did notice, that he's not dressing for a few games, and he seems fine at practice. He's moving around okay, and he's in good spirits. So no reason to think there's anything there.
As a guy that did the no dressing, it absolutely is terrible. Like, I want to be in the locker room. I want to be in warm up. I want to be in the locker room. I want to listen to what coach is saying. Like, when you're in the press box, for a game, it's maybe okay. 2, and like, wow, I want that feel. And I think that we've talked to Alex Lyon, and he would never say it, but I think it's got to be like, I want to dress. I want to be there. And so that's the thing.
The other thing here, the trade option has to be on the front burner because, in my opinion, there's no risk in making this deal because whoever it is, because you still have Devin Levi. It's not like and Georgiev. You're not going to be left exposed like, hey, make the trade, then all of a sudden somebody gets hurt, and then you're like, shouldn't have made the trade.
You're not the Cleveland Browns having to play 5 quarterbacks in 8 games. Like, that's not what it is. Yes.
Do you agree?
You have depth, but I do think there's a drop-off. I think, Devin Levi has had a couple of rough games in Rochester. Georgiev had a rough preseason at times. So the other interesting thing, like to your point, Marty, you can read into everything, right? Colton Ellis is getting these games. It's like everybody's getting a pretty good look at him around the league, right? So there's, but... And
I've been told St. Louis is pretty upset in losing him. So this
I can
was
understand.
Not... Yes.
I can understand. Like when he had... But they did have Bennington and Hofer, and their depth was Colton Ellis, and they lost him because of waivers, and that's why that's in place. But he didn't skate this morning, right? Colton Ellis wasn't on the ice. Maybe a day of maintenance rest, and you go back tomorrow. Maybe it's, listen, today, tomorrow you're resting and get ready for Friday. Like, I'm having a hard time reading it because there's that added, like, third wheel that keeps coming into my picture, and that's tough.
I try to cut through to Lindy Ruff and think about this from his perspective because he badly wants to get this right, right? He badly wants to get this team into the playoffs. And when I think about it, who is he trusting the most? Who does he want? Who does he trust tonight? But who does he trust for the rest of the season? I think it's Ellis and Lyon because, in part, of the injury that Luukkonen had. And Lindy Ruff mentioned it. He's like, we don't really know. Like, what if this pops back up again? And so trading Luukkonen would be somewhat risky and somewhat difficult to do probably. But it also opens up some cap space, which, interesting enough, with all the injuries they've had, they're kind of up against it because they're carrying so many more players than they normally would because of injuries. So the cap space might come in handy if you're trying to make a move to make this roster better.
So which forward is the first to go back to Rochester?
Probably Oslin, maybe?
I was going to say Mason Gertson.
Well,
probably him.
He never went. So when you say back,
see, he's a word guy.
Master of the words.
He's a word guy. I don't listen half the time.
Gertson would be first for me.
Gosh, we have a listener on this show finally.
But
overrated,
if somebody's going back, if somebody's going back, I think your point about Oslin and the power play, if he were to get crowded out by Norris, then I could see that happening. But
it probably would be between him and Dunn, I would think, at this moment.
Depends who gets back first, I guess, right? And what role and how quickly they envision for both Zucker and Norris. But Benson, you would think, wouldn't be too much longer. But these injuries, these illnesses, they've been a big mystery. And who knows? I mean, you need the depth. Somebody else will go down at some point that you need to call somebody up. And there may be a trade out there that we're not thinking of, right,
100%.
with one of these other forwards.
Yeah, Matthew, thank you. Great to see you today.
Thanks for
having me. Best
of
the holiday season.
Yeah,
and
that was awesome.
We'll look forward to having Matthew back on the show here. He's from The Athletic. Check out all his daily, consistent, awesome work at The Athletic.